racism and the death penalty. And just for some statistics, African Americans make up 12% of the population, but 42% of the death row population. And then, although blacks constitute about approximately 50% of murder victims each year, 80% of victims of death penalty cases were white and only 14% black. So this shows that the criminal justice system actually values white life over black life. A reason in 1972 why the Supreme Court actually put an end to all executions. And there's no case that illustrates this more clearly than the case of Rodney Reed, a black man convicted in a small town for the murder of a white woman who he was having a sexual relationship with by an all-white jury. Rodney Reed was convicted of the murder of Stacey Stites, a woman that he was having a consensual sexual relationship with. He was convicted on one piece of evidence only, and that was DNA evidence. His lawyers were both black and actually testified that they felt afraid to stay in Bastrop, so they chose to stay in Austin anyway. So it's like, how can you get a fair trial in a city that you can't even feel, in a small Texas town you can't even feel comfortable staying in?
Excuse me, Ms. Jones, could you say that again for the court? I didn't quite hear that. Did you say that his black defense attorneys actually said they were scared to stay in the town the trial was taking place in?
Yes, his state-appointed black defense attorneys opted to stay in Austin instead of Bastrop because of fear of what would happen to them there. And also, one of the big things in this case to me is that there were 2 beer cans that had DNA evidence of 2 police officers that were never investigated. Jimmy Fennell, Stacey Stites' fiance, actually failed a polygraph test when he was asked the question if he strangled her. There's a lot of evidence in this case that was never heard. And that's why I think that Rodney Reed deserves a new trial.
Rodney Reed deserves a new trial? Is that what you said?
Yes, Rodney Reed deserves a new trial and the death penalty should be abolished.
Thank you, witness. We appreciate it. Thank you to the witness. The court would now like to call our next witness, which is Miss Katie Fay. Miss Katie Fay, please approach the bench, take the stand.
Your Honor, it's fine.
Fine, sorry. The court is wrong, it's fine.
Your Honor, I put forth to you that you should find the death penalty guilty of false testimony based on fabricated evidence and bad science. Take the case of Cameron Todd Willingham. He was convicted of killing his family based on an arson investigation that was later shown by experts to have no scientific credibility whatsoever. Willingham was executed, an innocent man, in 2004. Take the case of Odell Barnes, where blood allegedly found on his clothes was later found to have lab chemicals in it, preservatives from a test tube, suggesting that it was planted on his clothes. Odell Barnes was executed by Texas in 1999. Take the Houston Crime Lab, where evidence was tainted by misconduct, mishandling, mislabeling, and damage. Houston sends more people to death than most countries based on contaminated physical evidence. Take the case of Rodney Reed, which a previous witness addressed, where the Travis County Medical Examiner, Vallarta, who is left under censure for his own shoddy and crooked work, guessed about the cause of the victim's death and fabricated evidence of sexual assault that made this a capital case in the first place. In this case also, DNA evidence was suppressed that would call Reed's guilt into question. Your Honor, bad forensic science is coming to light all around the country, leading to now hundreds of exonerations. What about those whose evidence doesn't get reviewed? Especially here in Texas, where Harris County and Travis County crime labs have gotten in trouble again and again. If we can't trust evidence to show the truth, we can't continue to execute people based on bad science. To do so, Your Honor, would be murder.
The court will come to order. Thank you, Ms. Fay. The court thanks the witness for her testimony. The court would now like to call Mr. Jason Kirikaitis. Jason Kirikaitis, are you here? Oh, well, the court would like to take a 1 minute recess. 1 second. I've heard a lot of testimony today about cases, bad confessions, bad science, people that didn't even execute or murder someone being given the death penalty under the law parties. Now, but the last question on the court's mind is this, Mr. Karakaitis. Isn't the death penalty all worth it if it stops people from murdering other people? And isn't that the original goal of the death penalty anyway?
All right, well, I have a few things to say about that. The idea that the death penalty is a successful deterrent is actually a fallacy. The fact is, there's to this day no study that we can reliably count on for evidence of deterrence via the death penalty. There's simply too many variables involved to make an accurate statistical connection between the death penalty and crime rates, not to mention that statistical correlation does not entail causation. The most recent product of these failings is a study that was featured in the Wall Street Journal, written by two professors of Pepperdine University's Center for Communications and Business, Roy Adler and Michael Summers. Adler and Summers state that the research shows that for every person executed, 74 fewer murders take place the following year. However, while they admit that there are likely other variables to be considered in their analysis, some that I might propose are the availability of law enforcement personnel, public access to weapons, the presence of violence in media, and access to education and health services. They suggest that, I quote, such variables might exist, but until they can be identified, Occam's razor suggests the simplest solution is probably the actual solution. This is a highly disturbing thing for two statistics professors to say. Indeed, not considering all the variables has been the downfall of many a statistical analysis. Deterrence is also sometimes supported on the basis of non-statistical arguments. Some claim that while we don't know for certain that the death penalty deters people from committing murder, we should assume that it does, because if the death penalty does deter and we use it, we save lives. If we don't, we are leaving innocents to die. If it does not deter and we use it, we have killed criminals. If we don't, we come out ahead. Unfortunately, this best bet argument is troubling because it assumes that some lives are more valuable than others, and that the use of the death penalty in itself is not a major moral issue. It should be noted that anyone who commits a crime already faces a substantial risk from household weaponry and law enforcement personnel, and that it does not follow that the death penalty will deter them any further. Some say that we can, by common sense, deduce that people fear death more than any other punishment currently accepted by society. So the death penalty will deter more than any other punishment. This makes two faulty assumptions: that there is an infinitely rising fear attached to punishment, and that people make cost-benefit analyses before committing crimes. In fact, it's been shown that people group punishments into certain categories when they commit crimes. They don't analyze the benefits of each decision. What then is society left for as a motive for keeping the death penalty? Only vengeance. Though it's easy to empathize with the desire of families and friends of murder victims to repay those whom they believe have hurt them, it's far more difficult, practically and morally, to put this into effect. First, there's the issue of arresting the true culprit, a problem that still is huge in our criminal justice system, as we mentioned from the beginning. The racial and class biases that continue to be inherent into the criminal justice system make this far more complicated than simply a matter of good forensics. Next, the idea of retributive justice itself needs to be reviewed. How do we come by the idea that the death penalty is proportional punishment for murder? Need punishment be proportional? Isn't the use of death as punishment chosen arbitrarily?